Welcome to Behavioral Health Today, a podcast brought to you by the Triad Network. This podcast is designed to share trending topics occurring within the world and our communities and bring them a behavioral and mental health perspective.
Welcome to Behavioral Health Today. I'm your host, Dr. Graham Taylor, and I am joined today by Sharlee Dixon. Hi, Sharlee.
Hi, Graham. How are you?
It's so nice to be with you. This is our first episode of a new series called BHT Bytes, where we're going to bring you a quick set of digestible insights into mental health issues and societal trends that are occurring around us. And in this series, we're taking a more relaxed approach, diving into the issues, shaping our world through the lens of mental health. These episodes are an opportunity really to explore trending topics, discuss key themes in behavioral mental health, and to stay connected to the conversations that matter most. As we step into 2025, coming off a particularly heated November election, it's a good time to reflect on the mindset that we want to carry into this new political chapter. The intense back and forth that I'm sure each one of us had some either familiarity with or some exposure to, this back and forth between opposing sides, highlighted how division has taken root in our country, often driven by tactics designed to create a polarization between us. Today, we'd like to explore a different approach, one that emphasizes setting a grounded and intentional mindset, focusing on what we can control. How can we listen without reacting, foster understanding, and create meaningful impact within our local communities? This is a chance to shift from frustration to agency and explore the power we have to make a difference, starting right where we are at. Sharlee, as we come into the show today, what was your experience around the election and just this past couple of months ago? What were you going through and experiencing and having going around you?
I mean, honestly, it was a lot of tension just kind of everywhere I looked, especially within the community of people of color. We were just kind of confused about why certain things were being said, why directions were being chosen by other people, other groups. And it really just kind of created a huge sense of tension, stress, anxiety, just an overall feeling of maybe hopelessness for a
Mm,
while there. I mean, it was with some level of excitement for a minute, like things were happening that we had never experienced before. Having a woman of color, running for president was something, of course, that our country had never experienced. And so you start out with these like, wow, this is exciting, but then it turned into something that no one expected or some
mm,
sides did not expect. And so it really
yeah.
did affect not only my mental health, but probably a lot of those around me.
Yeah, what I experienced too on my side was something pretty similar. We were just inundated, weren't we, with
Yes, it
from
was
social
everywhere,
media everywhere,
everywhere.
every conversation
Mhm.
just about had some remnant of or some seasoning around this
Yeah.
election and what we were doing. And what was hard, I think, was just what I was watching for was not just the conversations we'd have amongst community members or friends, family, those kinds of things. But what I saw taking place that really discouraged me most was the ways that things were being presented to us that had for me divisiveness written right
Yes.
across the banner. It
Mhm.
was meant to incite. It was meant to. I'm not always on the surface. Can you tell if something is misinformation or disinformation? And
Right.
but
Mhm.
it felt tactical to me in
Yes,
some
it did.
ways.
Yeah.
It was barbed. It was meant to wound, and it just felt so tactically divisive to me. Did you have the same kind of sense?
I did, and just like you said, that we were inundated with it. No matter what we were doing, whether it was watching TV, listening to the radio, I listened to some other podcasts, so commercials on those podcasts. It even went so far into children's programming. So
Oh yeah,
I hadn't necessarily had a ton of conversations with my children about the election. I didn't have to though, because they were being shown on commercials on
yeah,
Nickelodeon, on the Disney Channel, Disney
right.
Plus. And so we really had to, it was everywhere. So we
It
really
was
had to
far
have
reaching.
conversation that with a 5-year-old that was kind of difficult to have. He didn't understand why certain things were being said or
Mm.
terms were being used or which president should be elected. It was very intense.
What did you find yourself having to do to manage the inundation around this and just feeling like I'm just immersed in this. And on the one hand, we had to have information so we can make informed
Right.
decisions, and we had to know
Mhm.
what those issues were. But what's hard when issues are presented to us, I'll do a little quick sidebar real quick. I think of, the divisive tactics that can take place. I think of that story. If you go down and you get 100 black ants and you get 100 red ants and you put them both in the same jar, those kind of coexist. They're going to hang out and go around and do what ants do. But if you put the lid on and you shake the lid and you dump them out, the red ants attack the black ants thinking that they're the enemy, and the black ants attack the red ants thinking they're the enemy. But the real enemy is the jar shaker, the one that shook the jar.
Yep.
And I felt like there was some jar shakers out there
Absolutely.
and I think that piece was the most taxing part for me, mental health wise. Not just I'm cool with information. Let me make my decision, but give me the honest, valid, truth-based information. And I always had to question it. So I was always a little suspicious,
Mhm.
always wondering, did you notice that having an impact on you too?
Absolutely, it did. I was thinking the same thing, just that you spend a lot of time, or I spend a lot of brain power and time, like, gosh, is this real what this person is saying? Or trying to fact check things on my own, or like, did they
Yes.
really say it like that? Like, is that really what was the context within the whole conversation that a soundbite was taken out of? So and you asked earlier, like, how did I personally deal with it? Honestly, I really had to take a break. Even though
Yes.
I wanted the information and I wanted to know what was happening, at a certain point, I had to just mentally turn it
Yeah.
off.
It got too hot,
Pay
didn't it?
Yeah, it
Yeah.
really
It
did. It
just,
was it was just too much. It was
yeah.
everywhere. It was now I work in a dialysis clinic, so I had patients going back and
Ugh.
forth with it all day long, and it became to a point where I could no longer manage it, and I
Yeah.
just literally took a break from it. When commercials would come on, either I would mute, go to my
Yeah.
phone, switch
Right.
the channel. Like it had to be an extreme type of thing, just quit looking at emails that would come through on
Yeah.
this state is up for this, and this state is higher numbers for this, and this person.
Yeah.
It honestly, I just needed to take a mental break from all
Yeah.
of the discourse that was coming in, because it had
Right.
really consumed every all of my thoughts.
Yeah.
It really
Yeah. I
is.
think when you put it like that, I think back to 9/11
Mhm.
when, the planes hit the towers and people
Yeah.
watched it over and over and
Mhm.
over. And I remember, from a mental health perspective, we had to tell people to turn their TVs off,
Yeah.
to stop watching because there was a vicarious trauma that
Mhm.
they were experiencing, even though they were here in Hawaii where I live and it's, 5,000 miles away. They kept watching and became very tagged, became more anxious, more depressed,
Mhm.
less hopeful,
Mhm.
afraid it could happen. All of these things kick up, and that's just vicarious trauma, isn't it? And I think it's the same kind of thing here
Absolutely.
that you're saying with the election. At some point, ideally, people turned it off for a while.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I
yeah,
think that's
because it created, and not just I guess the mental health piece of it, it also created anger and discourse within communities that worked
yeah,
well together before. Like I was just mentioning in my dialysis clinic, we have people, of all ages, races, genders, everything in one room basically is how the clinic looks. But in those months leading up to the election, people who were friends before and are now friends again argued with each other. You could feel the
yes,
tension in the room. It was
yeah.
palpable everywhere.
We'll be right back after word from our sponsor.
Most of us spend more time at work than anywhere else doing anything else. So why not spend that time in a job you love? Introducing Triad's Jobs Marketplace, the only job site dedicated specifically to behavioral and mental health professionals. Featuring more than 1,000 open jobs from dozens of behavioral and mental health employers, and searchable by location, professional field, employment type, specialization, and more. Jobs Marketplace helps you find your next career opportunity. Full-time, part-time, or gig time, make the most of your time. To access Jobs Marketplace, register for your free professional account at hellotriad.com/BHT. That's hellotriad.com/BHT, and then click to Jobs Marketplace. If you're already a member of the Triad community, visit app.hellotriad.com/jobs. That's app.hellotriad.com/jobs. Visit us today and take your next career step tomorrow.
I would love to park on that for a little bit here because you're talking about ideally, we've got this capacity to listen without reacting,
Mm.
you know, and ideally, I mean, think about what you and I do in terms of mental health and our work. We create a space that's safe, non-judging, accepting, inviting, where people get to come in and they get to share what's on their heart, what's on their mind, and trusting that if I can hold this person's and I can hold this person's, ideally we can come together, not about who's right or wrong, but with a greater understanding. And from that understanding, maybe a greater empathy for each other and maybe a
Mhm.
greater acceptance of, I might see things totally different, but I know you better now. And I
Yep.
love this you that's expanding for me. And I ideally get to listen without that kind of reaction. But that's a challenging thing, isn't it? To
It
listen in
is.
that way. What do you think made it so hard to listen and maybe to talk in right ways where we didn't, elicit kind of a fight or a tension?
That's a really good question. Because honestly, I think some of it did come from just those tactical things that were kind of shoveled and forced down our throats
I
because it
agree.
wasn't like a harmonious election between two parties that had a similar goal for a better America. It didn't come
Yes.
across like that. In years past, I've been, witness to elections where it was a positive experience
Yeah.
and there wasn't a lot of negative things between the parties. It just wasn't like that. But it seemed like this time, because of the way that things were fed to us, through media and things like that, it really it made us as a society mimic how things were given to us. And it is
Yeah.
very difficult to keep a mind or an open mind of curiosity through all of that because things became more personal. It
Yes.
wasn't just these are what these political candidates believe. This is my personal belief about something that may not necessarily impact me in real life.
That's such a good point you're kind of bringing about here. I think it became hard too because we struggled, I think, to go deep within ourselves. I think,
Hmm.
one of the things that we can do around times like this is to recognize that, yeah, we're going to get influenced by media and all those things, what we're talking about here. But what we sometimes do is we get lazy in our thinking process. And rather than, kind of doing our own work, like you said, you did some of your own research to say, well, I just got
Hmm.
a sound bite there, but I don't know if that sound bite has the whole story behind it. So my task as
Right.
as an American citizen is to say, I need to be informed. Let me do it myself. If neither side's going to do it fully.
Hmm.
And I think that responsibility is huge. And I so admire that in a person. But I think there's also a part where we get lazy when we talk sometimes. We just grab sound bites that we hear, and we're using those sound bites to
Yes.
banter back and forth rather than saying,
Hmm.
"What are the most important issues to me
Hmm.
and why?" You're married, you got kids,
Hmm.
you're a hard, working, young woman, and there's some things that are uniquely important to you.
Right.
And I'm sure as you were going through this, election process, as I'm a little bit older and my kids are grown and I'm a little bit different season, but some things are vitally important to me. I had to go inside and say, what is important to me? And also, what do I see to be important in our nation
Right.
so we can be this beacon on a hill, be a light to other countries, to be a support to other countries, to be the best that we can be, asking what's important to me. And by the way, what's important to you? We don't oftentimes do
Mhm.
that, do we?
Right. No, we don't. And I don't know. I especially agree with you. During this time, it was not a lot of conversation with people that open mind of curiosity to say, "Well, can you explain what you mean when you say
That's
that?
it.
Like, what does that mean to you? Like, how have your experiences shaped why you think that way? Like, why do you think that this is a good idea to do? Can you explain to me where that comes from? Like, keeping that open line of communication." While you manage your own emotional reaction. It was not a lot of it was difficult for whatever reason for a lot of
Yeah.
America to manage our emotional reaction to the things that we were hearing. To say, okay, let's stop for a second. What is really happening? What is really being said? And how does it impact me? And why am I reacting this way to it?
I love that. I love I love the phrases you're using in this because you're saying it kind of starts with us individually and
Mhm.
saying,
It does.
Why am I reacting to this, either
Mhm.
positively or negatively?" But what you did, you took it a step further. You said, "What in my background, what in my life has shaped this in me?" Is it my early influences? Is it my family of origin? Is it
Mhm.
things along my life, lifetime that have really shaped these things, hence my stance being taken. And then what I love you saying is, by the way, what in your life has shaped you to take this stance? Help me appreciate that because maybe I'm missing something. I've got my life and my schemata,
Right.
my model of how the world works best. What is yours? Because maybe I can
Mhm.
expand mine in a helpful, informative way that can make me even better at the
Absolutely.
stances I take. But asking you to help me understand how you got to yours. I love that
Yep.
piece.
Yep. And I think as mental health professionals that might come I know, not might. It definitely comes probably a little easier to
I
us
think
to be
so.
able to say, "Hey, wait a minute. Like, let's talk about why you are feeling this or what in your life brought you here," or even
Mhm.
to reframe what somebody is saying and practice some active listening. Like, I hear what you're saying. Is this what you mean by that? Am I understanding you correctly? To really understand what we're hearing or the things that we're hearing, whether they are from a person or from a soundbite from an interview or a TV ad. But the regular, normal person or American person out there doesn't always take that extra step to
Yes.
pause and before they respond.
Wouldn't that be a great society
It would be,
we're
it would
not
be
where it's
amazing.
not a
Yeah.
cancel society, where we're not
Hmm.
shouting someone down, where we're not, you know, ruining their lives because they have a different point of view, but we embrace it. I mean, that America's the great experiment, isn't it?
It is.
I've been to 14 other countries and sometimes they got it easy, I gotta say, because they're all so homogenous,
I
and they
agree.
have these, thousands of years of whatever they're doing, and the way they've done it. And
Hmm.
they got these, cultural norms that kind of hold them in place. We're a great experiment. And we got how
Yeah.
many cultures and, uncountable.
Can't
And
even count them. Yeah.
we're all trying to bring our best selves to it ideally. And ideally, yours enhances mine and mine enhances yours.
Hmm.
And we don't get stuck up on these, if you don't agree with me, then I call you something phobic. Stupid. Because we miss out on such an opportunity
Yep.
to help you, excuse me, have you help me grow
Oh, yeah.
by broadening maybe some things that I haven't seen, maybe in a narrow way or maybe vice versa. But we miss
Right.
out on that opportunity when we don't, like you said, have that kind of active listening and practice
Yep.
in that.
Yep, and just that moment to pause and think before, there's an adversarial response back. I'm not saying that some of the things that were said were not infuriating
Sure.
or deeply personal and just wrong, but
Mm.
at the same time, we still have to manage how we react to those things. Because if we
Let's
just
talk about
instantly react, we are the same.
let's talk about that going forward because I think this may be something for us and our lives, for our listeners listening to the show. We're going to be going forward into 2025 now.
Hmm.
So, what if we were to be mapping out intentionally and in the healthiest possible way our best selves? What if we were to say, what is the mindset that we want to take into this coming, year, this coming 4 years with we're talking about politics with this 4 years, what's our best self going to be and what might we do intentionally to navigate this political shift taking place,
Yeah,
but to maintain some openness and somehow prioritizing us as a family first. We're a family first. We forget that.
absolutely.
We're a
Yeah.
nation first. I don't care. I'm
Hmm.
Scottish, so I'm a Scottish American, and but I'm an American, and that's how I see it. I don't lose.
Hmm.
I was just in Scotland for 2 weeks, and I love my roots, and I bring them with me, and they enhance what I do here in my life and my kids' lives. But I'm part of a larger family here.
Hmm.
What are your thoughts about maybe coming in intentionally to navigate this political shift? What could be our best self?
Some of that I think is focusing on what you can really control, especially in times like this where there's some level of political uncertainty. It is very easy to feel overwhelmed by just the amount of things that may change. Of course, we don't know what is going to happen, and that level of uncertainty creates all different levels of feelings and emotion and anxiety in a lot of Americans. So really focusing on areas of influence, what we can really control ourselves. So some of that might be, again, creating more personal boundaries, maybe
Yes.
limiting what you expose yourself to. So there isn't now much political things on television, But I feel like that's going to change, of course, once, once the actual political changes happen in the coming weeks. I think that that will change. And so really choosing what you allow into yourself and what you allow to come out on the same way. And then also looking at, you mentioned mindset. So developing a growth mindset. So embracing challenges as opportunities or possibilities. So maybe I did not necessarily agree with the election results, but it happened and we are here now. So let's change, let's shift our focus from how upsetting it is to what we can do going forward. Maybe
Yes.
look at local options for change
Yes.
because we can really impact. I have a almost to say a larger impact in the area that I vote in the Charlotte, North Carolina area than I maybe did in the national election. So if I want to become more proactive, then I should become more involved in the things in the grassroots organizations that are happening right around me to impact
Yeah.
change that I can really see on a daily basis. So
Yeah.
really just changing your mindset and creating more boundaries, I think will help us as we move forward through these kind of challenging times.
Yeah, man, I love that. I love the idea of, I guess I would put in there too that to complement what you're saying. Let's keep an open mindset and see what happens.
Mhm.
Let's
You
let some
never know.
things play out. And if they're not okay,
Yep.
let's address them.
Right.
I also really love, there's a Texas saying that says, shoot the snake that's closest to you first. So we
Mhm.
can be looking down the road and we can be looking,
Yes.
over there in Washington but right down my street here, they need my help. And if I can
Absolutely.
do that here, my
Absolutely.
community gets better. My community gets better. Our family here in our community gets better. And that
Mhm.
just kind of, like you're saying, ripples out into,
Right.
and that's where I was reading something the other day. It says, you know what, just go make something. Make
Mhm.
something. What are you talking about? Make something. Do something, on your
Right.
own. Don't talk, do.
Yeah.
And I love what
Yeah.
you're saying in your community, finding things that we can contribute there that make people's lives
Mhm.
better.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And shifting that focus from the negativity to positive change that we can actually have an impact on.
Yeah.
Because at this point, we don't necessarily have the voting is done. We cannot go backwards. We cannot change necessarily what happens in Washington for the next couple of years anyway. So
True.
let's focus on what we can really change in our communities. Let's make our communities better places.
Yeah. Yeah. I think when you put it like that, it conveys that we don't have to lose hope here.
Right.
Life is not over. Let's right size this
Right.
and let's don't buy into the things that could be politically dividing. Let's trust that whatever administration comes into our lives, these are people,
Mhm.
people voted them in and they're going to be in our lives on either side of the aisle for the next 4 years or 2 years.
Right.
And we're looking at Congress. Um, what can we do to make
Mhm.
things what can we do to make things better around us? What can we do to be able to stay informed? How can we have I even like the idea of what if we get better at communicating, if nothing else during this time, find ways to appreciate why do you think that? Why do you believe that? Why is that
Absolutely.
important to you? Which is what you were saying earlier, Charlie,
Mhm. Yep.
around give me your backstory. I would love to get to know you better around that. And
Mhm.
maybe as you do that, things in my own background come up that I get to look at and say, well, what shaped my decision? Oh, that's why.
Yep.
Now I've made it conscious. Do I still want to stay with that decision? Maybe it changes. Who knows? But I love this idea of maintaining some hope that
Yes.
you're suggesting we can sustain with a balanced
Absolutely.
outlook.
Yep. Because honestly, hope is really essential for having that balanced outlook. Like you mentioned, it really helps individuals and societies really navigate challenges. You're trying to take proactive steps and not necessarily being reactive to the negativity that's happening, but being hopeful for what is to come or the possibilities, or even how we can have a part in creating a positive future or positive change or the potential, what could happen. We really don't know what could happen on either side, good or bad, or however it may affect us, but we do have power and control over how we feel about them and really creating a positive outlook on how things may happen.
I think that's right. And the good news too, when you talk about this message of hope, and we're kind of winding down here, but this message of hope is we're going to have another election in 2 years. We're going to have another election in 4 years.
Right.
And the good news is the beauty of our country is that we get to have a say in what we experience and who's going to be, working for us. They're there
Absolutely.
as civil servants to work for us. And we have the responsibility to be informed, to watch for tactics to divide us,
Hmm.
to make sure that we're making the best informed decisions, that we're staying, most importantly, that we're staying together as a family. We dare not let the jar shakers divide us, because if we're divided, we can be controlled.
We
And
can.
we do not want to be controlled by the jar shakers. We want to be
Hmm.
controlled by our love for each other as a nation, our love for each other ethnically and racially, our
Absolutely.
differences, and to
Hmm.
find a way to be a better family because of that's who we are.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. I really appreciate that thought, Graham.
Yeah, well, I've just what a first what a fun first show to get out of the gate here with our new BHT Bytes.
Love it.
These are some fun opportunities I think we're going to be having with these, bringing some exciting things to our listening audience, and we're so happy that you joined us too, our listening audience, on our first BHT Bytes. We hope today's discussion, has been inspiring to you to approach this new year with some intention and curiosity, and to focus on creating the positive change in your community. Also, by the way, we'd love it if you consider leaving us a review and sharing these podcast bites with your friends. Because by spreading the word, you help grow and reach more people and allowing others to discover the valuable insights shared on each episode, on each of our episodes here. And we just love doing this. So thanks again for joining us today. And we look forward to having you back next time on Behavioral Health Today.
We appreciate all the support from our community, and if you like our show, one of the best ways you can support it is by giving us a 5-star rating and leaving a review. Behavioral Health Today is a podcast part of the Triad Behavioral Health Network, all rights reserved.